This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of bringing to the show Logan from Physician's Choice Supplements. We're going to talk about how to hyper grow a company. We're going to talk about his passion and interest in the space and how to manage a business that is growing and keeps controls on it and also looks towards the future. So, Logan, good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Appreciate you guys bringing me on.
You got it. So our audience here is all in the Halo sector, health, active lifestyle, outdoors. A lot of health club operators, sports complexes, and studios have always kind of tinkered with or kind of like touched into like, hey, can I sell supplements? Can I sell, these products to my members either through e-commerce or, have my own pro shop, if you will, and have that work and not become a loss leader because a lot of it just goes out the back door. Is not accounted for. So talk about how you got into this space. What was the impetus for that, and a little bit of the growth story and growing pains along the way.
For sure. So we started Physician's Choice in 2017. My background was internet marketing, kind of like e-commerce, and I've always been interested in the health and wellness space. We saw what was going on Amazon as a way to kind of like accelerate growth without holding a bunch of inventory or going straight to retail. And we took full advantage of that, launching what today is like the number one probiotic brand, but we really focused heavily on probiotics as like our core focus, gut health. And we grew the company from 2017 to today. This year we'll do like close to 250 million in revenue, all through Amazon. Now we're in brick and mortar retail, 70,000 different distribution points. So we've scaled pretty fast.
Nice. And have you grown it where you live, or have you put distribution centers, across the U.S. and how has that kind of played out from?
We have an office in Denver that's like our kind of like central marketing hub. And then we have distribution centers all across the U.S. I've put together like a really good team. I think talking about like growth and kind of like what it's taken to get here for me. And I think, probably a lot of your listeners could benefit from this is like one of the things that's been most instrumental is putting together like a really high class, top of the line executive team. I've learned from hard lessons and a lot of failure that like hiring smart people and getting out of their way has kind of like really been a key success to our growth.
When you take a look at going from e-commerce into retail, and we've got a company we invested in called Higher Dose. And we got approached by some really big box retailers, and the distribution that was kind of like dangled at us was really exciting. At the same time, kind of the policies and procedures, scared the shit out of us. Actually, basically like giving them stuff on consignment and then turning it into like this collection agency on accounts receivable, and then like if something gets returned, like that's on you. And we realized like the most of the risk was basically on the product provider, not on the retailer. So how did you get comfortable with the economics and the e-commerce, business model versus saying like, hey, now I'm kind of like, I'm at somebody else's whim and like my customer concentration might be like inverted, without me really doing anything, just signing a contract. I'm like, holy shit, I work for like big box retailers now. And I'm like a vendor and I'm not really in control of my own destiny, maybe by accident.
Yeah, 100%. So at this point, we actually, because to your point, we say no probably to more retailers that approach us than we say yes to, because you have to be very particular about that because they will kind of make you take all the risk and kind of screw you. And it's just like, so our policy now is like, unless it's on our terms, we just say no. And we're very particular about the retailers we take on. To your point, like we've always started with like e-com or distribution centers, like we control. So I think, to your listeners, like having health clubs or med spas, like you're in a unique position because you can control that distribution versus like, it sounds really sexy. I think when people are like, oh, you're gonna get into Walmart and then you get in and it's like, okay, you have to meet these minimum velocities and you have to spend this much. Like it's much more, there's a lot more goes into it than just like put some product in and you're good. So I think it's like if you can control where you're distributing and then like as you grow a brand and you get bigger recognition, then you can kind of start to like dictate terms a little more. But in the beginning, you're very much like sell where you can control and you can like house the inventory and there's not a lot of risk on you.
how have you kind of managed through? So I'm a consumer of everything that you produce and that you have out there. And I would say, even though I'm in this industry, I would say my level of knowledge is probably 2 inches deep and like a mile wide, right? So a lot of it might be um, price driven. It might be, I'm going to say this is like a very naive consumer. It might be your packaging that I just like, it resonates with me.
Yeah.
Like a lot of beverage companies have gotten sold recently, like you see the before and after of like Poppy as an example was called like nature is like mother nature or something. And
Yeah.
packaging didn't resonate. Then they fucking sell for like $2 billion
Yeah.
or something. But how have you kind of taken physician's choice and said, hey, like I'm going to give you the physician's choice obviously already is embedded in the fact that like you're an authority. And then
Right.
the packaging and the pricing is kind of like that lead. So I already know. I don't question like what's your brand because you've named it properly. So how do you think about educating me versus marketing to me?
That's a good question. I mean, we've started with price. Like our kind of like initial concept too was like we wanted to be a value brand. We didn't want to come out with like something that was just super expensive. We wanted to like give consumers value. And then what's nice is with the internet or e-commerce or even like, med spas or health clubs, like you can educate the consumer more, right? Like they come into your store or they come online and you have all the marketing there. So you can really educate them as opposed to like dropping your product in Walmart. That's a pure brand or commodity game. People are buying there based on price or based on packaging versus when you control the distribution channels, you can educate them a lot more. So that's why we've also chose like e-com and, just Amazon, TikTok, like those are our biggest channels for a reason.
If you take a look at supplements, over the last like 20 years, Dave and I've like tinkered in that industry as consumers and also, as helping people evaluate the space. The discounting that goes on with like whey protein, is like by 40% off retail or like 20% off wholesale. It's just like a volume game. And I think the differentiation probably is unknown to the consumer until you like read the label and try to figure out like what's really in this thing. It seems to me that the probiotic space and things that may be more deemed sophisticated or innovative, like cocktails, if you want to, whatever I want to call it, right?
Sure.
Has kind of like has somehow engendered to a higher value premium price point. Um, there's a question here. I'm not sure where it is yet, but how did you kind of get comfortable with saying like we're not in the supplement? Like I'm not selling you whey protein that you get from everybody else in like a tub at Costco. I'm going to sell it in the right formula. And I'm going to sell it in the right count.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of tidbit of like how you do that, because everyone in our industry is always like first month free, zero down. It's like don't sell something that's actually going to have value and affect someone's life and how they feel, because you should pay a premium for that.
For sure. Yeah. No, it's a great question. And I think what we did was like very early on, we got very intentional about just focusing on probiotics for that reason, because it wasn't really like a commodity like vitamin C or right? It's like every vitamin C is the same and people are just looking for the cheapest one. I mean, protein, I don't want to say is all the same, but it's more or less like, kind of a price driven game at this point.
Yeah.
So we wanted something that had more science based to it, something that we could charge a bit more of a premium and do, products that had actual like clinical studies behind them or strains of clinical studies, so that we knew people were getting something that, they would pay a little more for, but it's because there was some science behind it. So I think like looking at selling supplements, we were kind of like, we want to focus in on one area. We want to focus in on probiotics. We don't want to sell like every letter vitamin and compete with like the Nature's Whey and like all these like price driven brands. We want to compete with like one, and there's a lot of dinosaur brands out there that are still selling supplements, a lot of spaces to be disrupted, I think, in this area as well.
And when you use the term probiotic, because a lot of our audience probably knows what antibiotics are, what's like the clearest definition of a probiotic?
Yeah. I think the easiest way to describe it is they're living organisms. So in each capsule, there's like a living, we have 60 billion in our main product of like the living organism of probiotics, and they're live cultures they go in and help promote the good bacteria in your gut. So like the antibiotics will like kill a bunch of bacteria, especially if you're taking a lot of antibiotics. Like if my kids take antibiotics, we dose them up with probiotics afterwards to help restore their gut bacteria, help them feeling better. So it's really like restoring and adding good bacteria to your gut, which, in today's day and age, it's like we all eat and drink and do so much stuff that you're killing a lot of that good bacteria. So taking probiotics can help really just get that good bacteria in there.
Got it.
Is the easiest way to put it without getting too scientific.
It's helpful. And then when you marketing this, whether it's through, any of your social channels, which I've seen many, is your audience, your wife is your audience, people like you, like, how do you think about, who you're marketing to and what resonates with them? Because I feel like a lot of people in our industry just market so mainstream, like these med spas. Like, I need to talk to somebody who's got a problem that I could solve. And that might not be the person you think it is.
For sure, yeah. And so what we've done, now we have that narrowed down. Like now we know our audience is people like myself that are like health enthusiasts, like fitness advocates, and then women that like take care of themselves and are smarter than us men on taking care of themselves. So that's like a prime. But in the beginning, we were marketing very broadly to everyone, and it just like wasn't working well. So like over time, we've really dialed in and like done more research on like who is our audience, which with social channels is much easier to do, right? Like you can put out some broad advertising and start to see who converts, and then you just keep narrowing down on like those people that are actually converting and buying, as opposed to like trying to sell to everyone is just like a loser's game, I think.
Mm-hmm. And with the so many stocks have kind of lost their luster publicly on like all the AI and like what the take is going to be on that and how quickly that's going to, go into people's like, data scientists, action items. But have you seen the ability for you to take some of those statistics and now quickly figure out who your customer is or like what your conversion rates are and kind of try and like hit that lever harder?
More and more we are, yeah. I mean, there's becoming like more, there's just more data available now. So it's still, not easy, but we're like figuring out every week we're getting better at that. We're not like fully using AI probably to its capabilities yet, as it's like we're still trying to figure out what the right tools there are, but we're trying.
Yeah. And then from a subscription business standpoint, out of that 250, if you want to disclose or just give us some broad strokes, are you getting people on monthly probiotic drops directly from the company?
Yeah, I'd say like about 40 to 50% of that is subscription based. So like another thing that I like about the supplement business, or even, health clubs, med spas, like things where it's like subscriptions start to compound on each other over time. So it's like, I think it's a long game that a lot of people like quit early because they don't realize that like, year one, we lost a ton of money. Year two, we were barely making money. Like now year 7, we're doing really well, but it took 7 years of like compounding subscriptions. Like, that really accelerates business growth in my experience. I think, to your audience that's charging people subscriptions or they have people, it's like, you got to stick with it and like build that over time and find a way to keep people on.
Mm-hmm. And just got a rapid fire questions here at you. So, feel free to hit pause on that, but, everything you're saying is prompting something else. As you take a look at, e-commerce in general, and you think about your company, and after 7 years, like there was this guy we interviewed, he's like my software company is a subscription-based billing company. He's like, we're a 38-year overnight success. It takes a while to kind of get embedded. You're at year 7 now. What are some of the things that you're like, I have the right to do versus maybe I want the right to do? Like you could go into the supplement game. You could, deeper in and say, hey, I'm going to take a whey protein. I'm going to like mix a whey protein with a probiotic. Maybe I have the right to do that. Maybe I don't. So how do you think in your own brain about, where I could drive this and what's the benefit of it? And like the risk return, I guess.
Okay. That's a good question. For us, like I said, we've been really focused on gut health. So now we're like, okay, we have the right to move into like the fiber category and some of these like adjacent categories that are very much like probiotic based. But we still don't feel like we have the right to move into like protein or like creatine, because that's just like not on brand for us. So we're focusing on adjacencies at this point, because we've gone really deep in probiotics and like really hardcore like science-based gut health. And so now we're looking at like, my CEO said something the other day that I thought was a great quote, which is like, fiber is the new protein. And so we think like that's going to be, fiber is going to be a really interesting category. We're coming out with a really cool fiber product that's all clean ingredients, that's really effective. So for us, it's like, okay, what are the adjacencies, digestive enzymes that we can move into, as opposed to like trying to break into like whey protein or creatine or some of these other things that just are like really far off for us. So I like to go like a mile deep in our businesses, where it's just like, stay focused, not try to win at everything, win at what we're good at.
When did you flip the hat from, I own the business, to I'm hiring a CEO?
That was probably 3 years ago. We started to get bigger. We started to get, our team got to like around 50 or 60 people. And I realized like, I'm really good at like an idea guy and like coming out with like what works, what doesn't, like big picture marketing, but like I'm not a great manager, and I'm not good at like managing large groups of people. So I was like, I need someone to come in that's really good at that and like managing the team. So it's like recognizing your weaknesses, right? Like I think a lot of like founders or like business owners have a hard time doing that. And the faster you can do it, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you bring in outside capital, or have you been running this on your own?
I've been running on my own. I took some money off the table as like a secondary into my pocket a couple of years ago, but I still control the business.
Yeah. So what is your official title now? If you have one.
I guess founder.
Yeah.
Founder and the guy that's annoying my marketing team.
Right. And you see, you made a reference before, bringing on other people that are really smart onto the team. We just did another podcast with the guy who was just talking about like, you got to pay up for talent, and if you recruit and you hire the right people, they're basically going to be like tenured employees, because they're not going anywhere, because they know that this was the right fit for them, and vice versa. As you went through the growth of the business, how did you kind of sequence on your own? The reason why I'm asking is because I think most people do not do this properly. Like, who do you hire at what point? Some people hire like a COO, and they should have hired a chief marketing officer, because they didn't have enough revenue. Revenue goes to like kind of support an operation. So how did you kind of think about that?
I've always kind of looked at like, revenue generation is like the number one thing for our business or any bit. Like if you can't get money in the door, then you shouldn't be hiring like, doing like brand studies, like just like stuff that's like, or hiring like an HR person if you can't get money in the door. So for us, it was like marketing was a skill that I had and that I was good at. So I was able to get money in the door, but I wasn't able to control like what was happening with that money, or I didn't like know what was going on. So for me, hiring a CFO and like a high level finance person early on was really important. And then starting to build a team around that, like my weaknesses was kind of where I like brought in the team. But I think like a lot of founders I talk to these days are like, they're like so stingy with equity, and they're like, I don't want to give anyone. And it's like, from my experience, like you give away a little bit of equity to these top level people, and like you said, they're bought in forever, right? Like they're like, they're so bought into your business that, they should be adding way more value than the equity you're giving away. So I think it's like you give away a little equity, you hire for your weaknesses, you get a team of like rock stars in place. It's like, I trust my team to do a better job than I do at this point.
Yeah. What do you think happened in your past that created this self-awareness? Most people don't have this, right? You like learn the hard way. And it's like, like a friend of yours, like your wife, like, your mother, and so like something's in your brain that's like, hey, like I have when I look in the mirror, like I'm good with, like I know who I am and what I'm good and bad at, and like you got it. I'm not trying to be a therapist or anything. I'm just trying to use this opportunity to be like, because a lot of people I meet with, I'm like, dude, like you should be like SVP of marketing and fucking hire someone to run this business and be much better than you, and then you actually get to work and like be happy.
Sure. I think it was just over time. Like, this is my fourth business, and the other, three I've just like had a lot of hard learning lessons. I thought I was like wanted to be the big CEO and like the big boss. And then I was like, slowly over time, I realized like, you know what, I'm really good at what I'm good at. And like, I'm going to get out of my way and like hire people that are better than me, because there's always going to be people that are smarter than you at different things, right? We're not all the best at everything.
Yeah. Awesome.
Gotta let go of your ego. People have a hard time letting go of ego, I think.
Yeah. So in closing here, besides the self-awareness, and learn it early or understand it early from an entrepreneur, what else? What other like takeaways would you have, either for your younger self or for people listening here, regardless of what business they're in? Maybe some of your lessons or like a quote that you live by or something.
Yeah. I mean, one quote I'd say all the time, which is very like mundane, I guess, but I think it's just relevant, is if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And that's my experience with business, is like everyone wants to quit their job and start a business. And then they realize like, damn, this is way harder than my job. And if it's easy, everyone would be doing it. So it's like my biggest business lesson over, last 20 years has been like, you got to keep going. Like everyone wants to quit. Like you want to stop. Like it's going to get hard. You got to dig in. You got to grind. And like even the founders, like I think discipline and like not giving up are probably two of the biggest skills in business that'll take you really far.
Great. Appreciate some of the words of wisdom here, and love what you're doing. We use this term HALO, Health, Active Lifestyle, Outdoors. So welcome officially to the HALO sector.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.